Welcome on in, golf fans. It's your boy Gsluke here with our core plays. This time, the John Deere Classic we've got. It's another birdie fest, very similar to what we had in Detroit. You're going to see a lot of birdies, a winning score of probably at least 20 under par, and you're going to have to go low to cash those outrights or to get yourself into that top 5, top 10. Last week, Rickie Fowler was super clutch, came through for us at 14-1, was also a real helpful piece in those large field GPPs, and your boy here had himself a sweat there on Sunday. Actually, Friday through Sunday, we had top 50 lineups, top 200 lineups galore pretty much after every single round, and up until Alberg completely shit the bed on Saturday and Sunday, we had ourselves a top 5, maybe even a GPP wind kind of sweat. So it was a pretty good week last week. Props were also really helpful. Of course, that outright bet. So let's go ahead, take that momentum, right? Take our model, which isn't going to change all that much from last week to this week, and see if we can go ahead and run it back. Here in this video, going to focus on the top end of the Draftkings pricing and bring you 4 foundational plays that I'm going to be using in plenty of my lineups. These 4 players either model extremely well for this course or might just be values that I can't pass up at their price tag. Either way, let's go ahead and hop right on in. We'll start with a little peek at our key stats, where I'm really trying to look for high upside players. So no surprise at number 1, we've got putting. Anytime you've got a birdie contest, a putting contest, as some other people would put it, cough, cough, John Rahm, you're going to have to take a look at some putting stats. So looking at bent numbers, last 36, last 12 measured rounds. In terms of your approach play, this 50 to 125 yard range is unbelievably important this week. You're going to have just wedges on pretty much every other hole. And then this 125 to 150 yard range, I'd say it's like about twice as important this week as what you see for most tour events. So mostly looking at those 2 buckets, opportunities gained, birdie or better percentage, taking a look at a few driving accuracy stats. I don't think it hurts around this type of birdie fest. Easy courses, par 5 scoring, and then we're looking at TPC Twin Cities, Detroit Golf Club, and TPC River Highlands as my 3 comp courses, the home of the 3M Open, Rocket Mortgage Classic, and then you got the Travelers Championship. So all 3 events that are at this time of the year, they have similar agronomy, similar winning scores, and in terms of your irons, your wedges, that sort of thing, you're going to see a lot of scoring opportunities. So I think 3 really solid comps down low, looking at some scoring stats, and then like I said, more of like a putting and wedge kind of fest. So it might surprise you that I'm looking at a Cam Young and a Keith Mitchell who haven't been in the best form, right? We'll start with Cam Young up here and don't really fit that description. But what we're betting on here, right? And what I want to prove by getting to these 2 players, right, is don't marry yourself to a model. The models, the outright odds, absolutely love the Denny McCarthy's, the Russell Henleys of the world, but don't kid yourself, right? A lot of times these elite tier talents, a lot of times in this 9-10K range, just the best players in the world show up at any given golf course and have themselves a week. And I was really, really guilty of this last week. In fact, if you saw my weekend review stream, you know that I didn't play Colin Morikawa because I didn't think he had what it took when it came to the putting, right? I didn't think he'd be consistent enough. Well, rounds 1 and round 4, he was top 3 in the field in putting on both days. So somebody like Cam Young, a bomber like a Keith Mitchell, right, that maybe doesn't hit a bunch of fairways, maybe isn't the most consistent putter, a lot of people are just going to cross off their list. And especially with Cam Young right here, who I think is by far the best player in this field. And it's by far, right? Like not even close. Like maybe Auberg would be second on my list. And he's the 4th most expensive player at 10 grand. It might be lower owned than everyone else around him because of the recent form concerns, because he doesn't fit this course. Then give me Cam Young, right? I'll be that fish that goes out there, plays a low-owned Cam Young, and gets him at his breakout win, right? Just like last week, I was a fish for playing Rickie Fowler at such a price tag, betting him at such a number. Well, hey, if being a fish goes out there and results in me winning 28K on a Rickie Fowler outright, then I'll take it, right? I'll take it all day. So 10 grand there for Cam Young. I don't think it's the worst price tag in human history. And at his outright number, I've bet a very similar line to the Rickie Fowler last week and a very similar price tag on it. So it'll be a huge payday if it comes through. It's risky as all outright bets are, but when I like taking a shot on a player, I like doing it on somebody that has that top 5, that winning upside. And though Cam Young hasn't won yet, nobody can argue that he doesn't have the upside to one day punch that ticket, right? Everyone's just waiting on it at this point. And I think in this kind of field, the price tag is going to scare a lot of people off, kind of like what you saw with Rickie and very well might be the time that he cashes through, which would be tilting to a lot of people, I'm sure. Just like the Ricky win was tilting for anyone that didn't take him, I'm sure. Keith Mitchell at $9,600, very similar argument. Right? I'd argue that he's much more consistent, a much higher pedigree player than pretty much everyone else around him. He has the tour win, right? I guess you could say Adam Hadwin has one, right? Taylor Moore does. But somebody like Keith Mitchell has also posted a bunch of top 25s this year. I mean, just a few months ago, right? Keith Mitchell was like the darling of everyone, right? Was very consistent, actually had a few top 5, top 10 finishes. It's kind of fallen off since then. That's why he's number 61 in recent form ranking. But I'm more of a long-term sample size guy, right? I'm about taking chances on guys bouncing back. And because of the form, because of the fact that he's a bomber, doesn't fit this golf course, kind of like Cam Young, these guys are going to be completely overlooked. And if we take a look at the last 36 rounds, it hasn't been great for either player, but it also hasn't been horrible, right? Both gaining prolifically off the tee, right? 0.6, 0.8 shots per round. The approach play leaves a little bit to be desired, right? Cam Young, 0.2 strokes per round, right? He's at least gaining, right? But not all that amazing. Losing there for Keith Mitchell, okay, that's not great. And then the putter for Keith Mitchell has been a plus, right? Kind of makes up for the approach play. And we know the issue for Cam Young, right? Guy just cannot make a putt for his life. If those guys turn around their weaknesses, right? Approach play for Keith Mitchell, the putter over there for Cam Young, you're looking at them at least contending at this golf tournament. So this is in the stipulation that both of them are going to be relatively low owned, and if that's the case, I'm going to be getting there on bunches on both of those plays. Before we hop into the last two, I'll remind you, check out my Patreon page if you haven't already. If you want access to all of the spreadsheets you see, all the information that I'm using to make these videos, to do my analysis, select outrights, go out there, fire on DFS picks, check out the link in the description. It is $10 a month. You get access to these. Everything will be obviously non-blacked out on there. So you'll see all my modeling for every player, all of my total model rankings, points, cut rates, so on and so forth. Player poll and ownership as it updates there Tuesday and Wednesday. All of that, my showdown sheets, which are posted for rounds 2 through 4, which look very similar with all of the content for then, and all of my prop content. So little plug I got to do, right? It also helps me with the channel, right? Helps support what I'm doing here, making all this content for you guys, and gives you an even more better understanding of what I'm doing week to week. For our final two picks now that we've got that out of the way, we got Steven Yeager, right? A couple 8K options. We had a 10K and 9K, and I really like this 8K range this week. Steven Yeager, $8,800, is another player that can hit it a long way. That's not why I'm getting to Steven Yeager. It's much more about his birdie or better percentage, right? Keith Mitchell, we know he can take a place nuclear low, right? Same thing with Cam Young, right? Those are, I didn't have to tell you that, right? You knew that, right? That's part of the reason I like getting to them. Very high birdie percentage players, very aggressive. Steven Yeager, that is what he's known for. And fortunately for Yeager, he's playing a lot better of late, right? We take a look at the recent form metrics, gaining across the board except for the putter. That's very predictable. That's kind of like what he does. You take a look at the last 12 measured rounds, it's the same exact story, right? Just a slight loser with the putter. So he's got to go out there, spike that flat stick to go out there, have the kind of performance we want, right? I'll remind you, right? Number one key stat, right? We don't have the weightings over here, but it is by far the highest weighted stat I'm looking at. So that's kind of what keeps him there at like the 1432 range. Because in terms of ball striking, right, he's been very consistent, right? Gaining tee to green, pretty much no matter what, sample size we're looking at, right? He's playing well here. In terms of your event history, right, none for Cam Young. You can see Mitchell has a T7 and a missed cut, okay, right? And then Steven Yeager down here has played here 3 times, believe it or not. A couple times when he was still on the Korn Ferry Tour. Top 30 last year, WD, and a missed cut. So I'd say kind of up in the air. Not great course history for any of these players, but not horrible course history either, right? Little top 10 finish for Keith Mitchell, little top 30 last year for Steven Yeager. He's a much better player now and a much better player last year than he was back there in 2019, 2017. So I don't hold those finishes and that WD against Yeager all that much. And our last play, kind of similar to a Yeager, another high upside player. Yeager hits it a long way, that's true. But Taylor Montgomery, he does the same thing, but is a much better putter. In fact, you take a look at the bent numbers, right? He gains nearly 3/4 of a stroke per round. You take a look at the last 36 measured rounds, they've not been kind to him. In fact, the ball striking has been horrible for Taylor Montgomery. Still an elite level short game player, but it's hard to go out there and really make any noise at all when the ball striking is as broken as it is. And last week I thought was a perfect venue for Taylor Montgomery. That was a really good bounce back spot for him, and he didn't show up, right? Wasn't in the field. I was disappointed by that. I was really stoked to see him in this field because once again, it is a perfect fit for him. He's an aggressive high birdie percentage player, top 40 on the PGA Tour in that category, in a very inconsistent year. And must I remind you, this guy at the beginning of this year was like top 10, top 20 machine week in and week out, right? And sure, he's had a few bad weeks, right? I'm playing a couple guys in shaky form, right? A Cam Young, a Mitchell, obviously down here with the Taylor Montgomery. He's got a little bit of sketchy form, but I'm okay with that. This is a weak field. It is a get right spot for players. It is an easy golf course, right? You're not going to run into all that kind of trouble, right? You're not going to duff a bunch of chips around this golf course. And I think it sets up perfectly for these, high horsepower players, guys with immense upside out there that can go out there and just roast a golf course to death. So Taylor Montgomery, it's a bounce back spot for sure in terms of your stats, right? Whether it's the last 36, whether it's the last 12 measured rounds, it's the same thing, right? Elite level short game, horrible with the ball striking. So he's got to shake that. He's been in a rut for a few months at this point, but if he's able to, at this price tag, I'm expecting low ownership, or because of that recent form, could be an absolute nuts type of play. The only guy I'm expecting to get ownership here is probably Steven Yeager, right? He's probably going to be maybe even like 20% owned in this sort of week, because there's not a ton of guys around him that are amazing, right? Not a bunch of chalk, and his form kind of stands out, right? I know Smalley's playing pretty well, Benny Ann's playing pretty well himself, but Yeager, I think everyone's going to kind of recognize the course fit there. So I'm needing some chalk with Steven Yeager, but the rest of these picks, and Cam Young will get ownership. Same thing with Keith Mitchell because of their price, right? People spend their salary, but hopefully in that 15% range, it's something that we can get plenty of leverage to. Alrighty guys, that is all I've got for the core plays this week. Before you hop on out of here, smash that like button for me, and also comment who you've got winning this week, right? Whether it's a stud up top in the 10K range, maybe a 9 or 8K option that you've got an eye on. I'd love to hear your thoughts down below. And just to give you my sleeper this week, we're gonna go with Steven Yeager. I think it's just a good fit for him. Place where you got to get hot with that putter, go out there, throw some darts on a receptive golf course. I'll take my boy, the German out there, Steven Yeager. But go ahead, let me know down in the comments who you're taking. And of course, best of luck with all of your lineups, any outrights you're taking this week too. These 4 core plays, I bet week in and week out, doing the same thing this time, and probably gonna add a few value plays as an outright as well. So keep an eye out for that video. It'll be dropping sometime tomorrow morning on Tuesday, giving you guys a few picks towards the bottom end of the pricing. But until then, like I said, best of luck. I appreciate the support here. Drop that like button if you haven't already, and I'll catch you guys for the next piece of content.